So here we are, the second Sunday of Easter, which means it's still Easter because in our tradition, we celebrate for 50 days. So we get to have parties every day for 50 days, right? Is that what we do? Yeah. Well, it would be really fun, right? So here is the day after Jesus is crucified. It's still that same day, it says, the same day. And the disciples are so afraid because their friend, their brother, their leader has just been violently, publicly killed. And they're hiding because they're thinking, we're next. We're next. They know we walked around with him. They know we were proclaiming the same things. They know we were healing people. We're next. And so they're hiding. So Jesus does what Jesus does always. Comes to them in their fear. Presents himself to them and says, here I am. Peace be with you. And the response that the disciples have is joy. They're overflowing with joy because all of a sudden it is made clear to them that all the things that Jesus has been teaching them, all the things he has been telling them is going to happen, has come true. And so now they're not afraid, but they're filled with joy. And so their response and their reaction to this, believing, seeing Jesus, is to go out and tell the others that weren't present. And we have Thomas who says, I want to see. I missed out. I wasn't there. I want to see. I want to see my Jesus. And so Jesus comes back another time. And once again says to them, peace be with you. Now you notice that it doesn't say anymore that the disciples are afraid, right? They're no longer saying that they're afraid, because now the first disciples know this, right? And so there's this encounter between Jesus and Thomas. And when Thomas sees Jesus, his response doesn't say joy, but his response is, my Lord and my God. He's the first one we hear to make that proclamation that Jesus is God's Son, that Jesus came back as God's incarnate self. Jesus' divinity is proclaimed in this encounter. So we have these two encounters of the disciples and of Thomas when Jesus comes back to them, and when they believe, when they affirm, their response is both joy and a statement of faith that Jesus is God's Son and Jesus is the Christ. And so I wonder about this. What does it mean for us to say that we believe? What does it mean for us to say that we believe? Now, if we say that we believe, what does that mean? And one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about and take a pause here is about the word that is used in the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John doesn't use the word faith. The Gospel of John says the word to believe, because it is a verb, it is an action. It's not something that you just take in, but something that causes a particular response. And so the response from the disciples is to tell, to be joyful, to proclaim Jesus' divinity. And to trust someone, to trust in something, what does that require? It requires a relationship. We can't trust people we don't know. We can't trust people we don't engage with. We can't trust people that we just see once, right? It requires us to be engaged, to know one another, to play with one another, to work with one another, to garden together, to sing together. Think about the people in this congregation. Think about the people you know that you trust. How did that trust get built? How did you get to trust that person or that community? What happened in that? What were the encounters that build slowly over time? Trust. And one of the things that it requires is vulnerability, the willingness to open yourself and say to someone, I need help. I have some news. I don't even know how to share them. I'm excited because, right? It's this back and forth, is this living together, this being with one another that builds this trust. And so think about the life that Jesus had with his disciples. There was this ongoing working, being, eating together that they did that built this trust. And so now when they thought maybe all the things that Jesus had said weren't true, because now he's dead, he comes back and says, no, I am here. And so there's this real joyfulness, this real affirmation and affirmation of saying, oh, he's our Christ, he's our Messiah, he's the Son. And so it causes in them this response. So we have 50 days of Easter. I really want to invite all of us to really recommit ourselves to this life that Jesus wants for us. How are we to respond to this affirmation that we say we believe? Because the fruit of that is that we have a life filled with joy, filled with peace, filled with love. And that allows us to then be and engage and encounter the world in a particular way. What does it mean for Mother Minerva to say that she believes? How does she engage with people? How do I spend my money? Where do I spend my money? Where do I give it? Where do I hold it back? How do I spend my time? With whom do I spend my time? Am I forgiving? Am I kind? Because Jesus has been kind and forgiving to me. And it is living in that life that Jesus has taught me. Is that transforming me? Is that engaged? Is that changing me to be that person that God so wants for me to be and to live that life that he was willing to die for? That is a question for each and every one of us. How do we respond? How do we live out that faith that we proclaim? Because it is in that engagement, in that transformation, in that new life that Jesus gives to every one of us, that we can then really see this eternal life beginning now, working in our communities now, transforming our world now. And so let us really think hard about what is our response going to be, and how can we recommit to that life that Jesus gave for us, wants for us, so that we can be reconciled to each other and to our God. Amen.